Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have some people streaming in here while I give some opening remarks. We have a few more announcements than we normally do to start the program, but I'm delighted to welcome you all here today for our program. Winter is upon us, and it's fun to be celebrating it with today's topic. As we head into a season that is notorious for the generation of waste from food and other consumer products, keep in mind that we seek to make our program an official university-sanctioned zero-waste event. Please help us reduce our environmental footprint and enhance our reuse of materials by paying close attention to the signs and instructions that are posted above the bins as you throw away your materials. There's a receptacle for compost, recycling, and trash. I'm delighted to report that during our November EPN, we actually diverted 13 pounds of materials out of the landfill into our composting system, and we can collectively produce 1 pound of trash and 1 pound of recycling. So help us improve upon those metrics today by participating in our zero waste event. The way it works too is some of the students sort through the trash actually to sort of make overcome the errors of you all. So the better you all do in terms of sorting this, the easier it makes their life. So. And I've talked to Joe and the one of our volunteers here that I think there's ways we can probably improve the signage to make your lives easier too. So we'll work on that. I hope you enjoyed today's meal and that you had a chance to discuss the student poster presentations. The presentations today were from the senior capstone presentations from classes that were completed, are in the process of being completed. We appreciate you taking the time to visit with them all. I want to thank a couple of people for their efforts related to this. We want to thank Dr. Matt Hamilton, who taught our school's environmental policy and decision-making oriented capstone project, and Dr. Wu Yang Hu and Myra Moss's environment, economy, development, sustainability themed capstone projects, both of which were taught this autumn semester. These are I really appreciate the faculty that take the time to lead these classes because it takes a lot of work to sort of create the networks and the partnerships that allow for the community to come together with students. And so it's quite an undertaking, and I'm delighted to sort of always see the outcomes of these projects. I think this is the third or fourth year where we've profiled these at the December EPN, and every year they impress. As a general overview, Matt Hamilton's students, please raise your hand. Who's here from Matt Hamilton's class? So these are the students that were, and some of the students might still be out there running off to classes already. These students collaborated with the City of Columbus Department of Public Utilities to strengthen the department's stakeholder relations through the Blueprint Columbus program. Each group designed a project to strengthen Blueprint Columbus' capacity to engage diverse stakeholders groups and to engage diverse stakeholder groups, which included developing lessons plans for local AP environmental science classes featuring lecture materials, lab, and discussion guides, which I think is a great thing to sort of like us get out in the community and share with some of those teachers, because I think helping some of the youth understand what's going on in these communities would be great. One group created a set of outreach materials, including a video animation of how permeable pavement works, and another team made a story map that takes viewers on a tour of Columbus neighborhoods where Blueprint Columbus is being implemented, highlighting the value of green infrastructure along the way. And a fourth team analyzed social media data from Facebook to show the relationship between heavy rain events and Clintonville residents' tendencies to post comments about green infrastructure. I'm a Clintonville resident. I tell you, it's like living in Clintonville is like an adventure, and I mean, I'm sympathetic to this, but it's like if we're going to tear down a tree, you better go through a lot of work to figure out whether that tree can come down. And every time I see these rain gardens now, there were some Facebook postings, or back when this was originally coming out, people worried about people falling in the holes associated with these. And I just constantly drive by them now, and I look like, how deep is that, and how far would a person fall into the hole? The bottom line is that figuring out how to outreach and sort of promote this, because I think residents are sympathetic to these kind of exercises, but we need to spend a lot of time socializing and orientating people to sort of like what's happening. So I really appreciate that particular event. I'm curious whether we're going to be able to convince those Clintonvillites to sort of accept these rain gardens. I do think they'll be lovely eventually, but thank you for that group for their efforts there, and thank you for all those groups. A final team created a set of materials designed to encourage private properties currently outside the purview of Blueprint Columbus to implement green infrastructure on their properties and help Blueprint Columbus broker between the private organizations and other organizations interested in committing their resources to assist these efforts. Thanks to Matt, the City of Columbus, and those students who those students for your efforts to build public awareness around our local community. I do think it'll have an impact. Students enrolled in Dr. Hu and Maya Moss's capstone class, please raise your hand. So we have a number of them clustered over here. These students engaged in one of 6 different projects. One team worked with Smart Columbus to provide a cost comparison of electric vehicles. Another team partnered with the Columbus Airport to identify electric vehicle adoption potentials. A third team worked with OSU B Campus Initiative, while another engaged in research to help OSU become a more bicycle-friendly campus. I believe some of the students participated in our EPN breakfast program last month on biking. A 5th team looked at sustainable management of Ohio watersheds, and their 6th and final capstone team worked with the community of Greenfield, Ohio to develop an economically viable and sustainable development model. I understand we have partners from Greenfield here today who made the 1-hour-plus trip to attend this meeting. Are the folks from Greenfield here? Well, maybe they, here they are, great. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm delighted to sort of see the opportunity for our students to actually travel out in the state. I think one of the things I'm sensitive to as Ohio State is we can sometimes get really focused on Columbus and in the region, and it's great to sort of like move out, and sort of I hope you had a great experience working with them. And please provide Myra or myself some feedback on whether the students kind of met your expectations. So we're delighted that the students were able to sort of go out and work with one of our regional communities. We thank all the capstone partners who have joined us today, and we look forward to seeing the follow-through on all of these events. Now let's turn to today's topic. In the hallway, you may have seen our school's 50th anniversary posters highlighting our tradition of excellence in forestry. If you'd like one of our forestry posters, please see Molly Bean after the program. So one of the 5 pillars, I think, of the school's sort of expertise is forestry, and we have a couple of our forestry faculty here today and our program leaders. And at the School of Environment and Natural Resources, we are excited to have supported the forestry industry over the years, and that poster is a way to honor that. I'm also delighted for those of you that are sensitive to these things. We just received accreditation this last week from the Society for American Foresters. So our program is now, continues to be accredited. It's been accredited for 25 years, I think, now. So big undertaking. Steve Matthews was part of that. David Hicks, who's not here, was part of that. So we're delighted to offer such a program. As part of our responsibility, I think, in terms of serving the forest industry, we try to promote aspects of that. And today, with our program on Christmas trees, I'm delighted that we can promote one aspect of the forest industry, and our school does have a relationship with the Christmas tree industry in particular, with some genetic breeding that took place at our Worcester campus many years ago. Joe Campbell's been updating me over the past few months of the development of today's program. He mentioned how faculty, students, and staff were stopping him in the hallways of Cotman Hall and telling him their stories related to Christmas trees. He enjoyed that much and was able to actually get some of those individuals to share their story in a video format. As a little holiday present, we will feature some of these stories for you midway through today's program. One activity we love to also support in the school is the Forestry Forum's Christmas tree sale. I bought my tree from the students on Friday, and I'm delighted that we put it up, and it was a wonderful tree. Our Forestry Forum student organization, the student chapter of the Society of American Foresters, we are proud to provide them a brief opportunity to share about their annual Christmas tree sale today. Spencer Calhoun, president of Ohio State's Forestry Forum, will come up soon to provide an overview of the sale and perhaps make a last-minute sales pitch for some of the remaining trees we have here at the 4-H Center. Did anybody bring their? If you have your vehicle, I think they have twine, so we can get it lashed on your car. Following Spencer at the podium will be Valerie Graham, executive director of the Ohio Christmas Tree Association, who will provide some comments about our program and introduce our speakers. First, please welcome Spencer Calhoun. Following his comments, Valerie Graham. Thank you, and please enjoy today's program.
Hi there, and good morning. My name is Spencer Calhoun. I'm a 4th-year student in the forestry program and the president of the Ohio State Forestry Forum. First off, I'd like to thank Dr. Joe Campbell for hosting the event and for personally inviting the Forestry Forum to be involved. The Forestry Forum is a professional club made up mostly of forestry and natural resource management majors. Our mission statement is to strengthen forestry professional skills and increase student exposure to education and employment opportunities in the forest sector. At our meetings, we bring in professionals from a wide array of forestry-related fields, have them present on their work, network with them, and ask them questions. We also try to get out of the classroom for some more hands-on forestry. This year, we helped plant trees for a Forest Service research project. We have plans to tour a maple syrup facility and work on a honeysuckle removal project. But by far, our biggest activity of the year is our Christmas tree sale. This year, our sale was last Thursday, the 29th, through Sunday, the 2nd. We ordered 180 trees from Fisley Tree Farms, the majority being Fraser fir, with also some white pine and blue spruce. I thought that this year we'd have a bit of a down sale because we didn't promote it as well, and Saturday, which is normally a high selling day, was projected to rain all day. Even with a terribly rainy Saturday and an almost summery Sunday, we had a great sale and only have 11 trees left, which, if you want, we can sell to you just right behind the 4-H center in the little greenhouse. I really tried to talk to every customer that came and asked how they hear about us, and the response I heard time and time again was that they've been coming to us for years and they won't go anywhere else because our trees are always fresh and they last the whole season and then some. So properly grown, fresh cut Christmas trees really mean a lot to us, the sellers, as well as those who buy the trees. Our Christmas tree sale is a highlight for me every year because it gives us time to bond as a club, interact with those who support us, and raise money for the Forestry Forum. The money we raise goes toward helping our club run, helping us travel for events and timber sports competitions. Because the OSU Forestry Program is SAF accredited, this year we paid each student's fee to become a member of the Society of American Foresters. If you'd like to ask me or other members questions about the club, want to purchase a club patch, or still need a Christmas tree for the season, we'll be behind the 4-H Center in the greenhouse for a bit after the breakfast. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Spencer, and glad we're promoting the real Christmas trees here this morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to each of you. And on behalf of the Ohio Christmas Tree Association and over 175 of our members across the state of Ohio, I say happy holidays to each and every one of you. And we are so proud to be a part of today's program with the Environmental Professionals Network. We are here. We like real Christmas trees, as you might understand, and this is a very busy time of year for our growers all around the state of Ohio. And I'll do another plug over and above Spencer. If you haven't found your real Christmas tree, go to our website, ohiochristmastree.org, plug in your zip code, and you can find a grower close to you. I've been invited here today to introduce our speakers, and we're proud to have with us today Blake Rafeld. Blake is a member of the Ohio Christmas Tree Association. He is a landscape architect, he's a tree farmer, and he's a partner in the Sugar Grove Tree Farm located in Ashland County. He planted his first trees in 1976 and continues to be actively involved in the Christmas tree industry. As a member of the Ohio Christmas Tree Association, we had asked him to serve as a representative to the National Christmas Tree Association. He took on this job for several years, went on to take some higher leadership role in which he served as the president of the National Association in 2014 and 2015. So Blake is a true supporter of the real Christmas trees around the state of Ohio, and will provide that input here later on today. Our second speaker will be Dr. Elizabeth Toman. She's with the Ohio State University School of Environment and Natural Resources. Her interest in the area lies in forestry, water quality, and also transportation. She received her degree in the forestry engineering and civil engineering and her master's degree from Oregon State University, and she holds a BS degree in environmental studies from Utah State University. And I had the chance to talk with her, and I said, how long have you been in Ohio? Ohio is kind of a long way from Oregon and Utah, but glad to have her with us here this morning. And a more detailed bio you can find in the program. But we look forward to hearing from Blake and also Elizabeth. Thank you.
Good morning. I think I first have to thank Kathy Smith over here for suggesting that I make this presentation, and she made it to Joe and to Valerie, and so I'm here at their request, and thank you for inviting me. And I hope the case that I make this morning for real trees influences your Christmas tree purchasing decisions, not only this year, but for many years to come. So I'm pleased to talk with you about real trees and a real tree Christmas. I'm going to have to make an adjustment here. There just isn't quite enough room up here for that. I'm well aware of how busy this holiday time of year is, so I appreciate your attendance today. I also understand that this audience is comprised of professionals who believe our physical environment should command our attention and care to keep it safe for human habitation today and into the next century. I don't have numerous scientific studies to share with you that support the environmental advantage of real trees over fake trees. What I do have is one scientific study that compares the impact of each tree on the environment and some empirical conclusions about the impacts and advantages of real trees over fake trees. I'll talk about those studies and conclusions in a few minutes. First, let me ask you 4 questions. How many of you display a Christmas tree, real or fake, in your household? And maybe it's your parents' household in the case of students. Okay. Whoops. How many of you display a real tree, not the fake one? Good for you. Okay, now the next 2 questions are trick questions, so you're warned. How many of you think plastic grocery bags, plastic bottles, and plastic straws are an environmental problem? And keep your hand up. Okay, the next one's coming at you. Now, those with your hand still up, how many of you display a fake tree? Okay, we got some work to do. Perhaps I can convince a few of you to purchase real trees by the time I conclude my remarks. Celebrating the holidays season with real Christmas trees is a long-standing holiday tradition. And by the way, the tree that you see in this picture was grown at my farm, and this was posted on our Facebook page by one of our customers. Each year, millions of American families celebrate the holiday season with a fresh, farm-grown Christmas tree. Christmas tree enthusiasts believe the aroma of a real Christmas tree is a strong reminder of the symbol of life, family traditions, and the innocence of childhood itself and a connection to the natural environment. Much like other crops that provide food for the body, the smell of a farm-grown Christmas tree provides food for the soul. The use of evergreens as a symbol and celebration of life during winter solstice celebrations started in ancient Roman and Egyptian times. The practice evolved over centuries to be incorporated in the celebration of Christmas in the Germanic areas of Europe. Here are some selected historical Christmas tree events. The first recorded display of decorated Christmas tree was in 1510 in Riga, Latvia. Christmas trees were decorated with fruit, cookies, and candy that would later be shared with family members as gifts after the holiday season was over. In 1531, the first retail Christmas tree lots were present in German cities. By the 17th century, Christmas trees were decorated with ribbon, tin shapes, small books, and lace, as well as food. In the 18th century, trees decorated with lit candles were first recorded. In 1777, the Christmas tree tradition was brought to colonial America by Hessian troops fighting for Britain in the Revolutionary War. In 1804, U.S. soldiers stationed at Fort Dearborn, that's Chicago, brought evergreen trees into their barracks at Christmas. In 1842, the custom of decorated Christmas trees began in Williamsburg, Virginia. In 1851, retail Christmas tree lots appeared in New York City, the first known in the United States. In 1856, Franklin Pierce, our 14th president, brought the first Christmas tree into the White House. In 1923, President Calvin Coolidge held a public ceremony to light a Christmas tree on the ellipse between the White House and the Washington Monument, thus beginning the annual National Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony. In 1966, members of the National Christmas Tree Association started the tradition of presenting a real Christmas tree each year to the First Lady for display in the Blue Room of the White House. My wife, Chris, and I were privileged to participate in this tradition in 2014 and 2015. We were there representing the National Christmas Tree Association. Growers from Pennsylvania provided the Blue Room Christmas tree in both 2014 and 2015. Now in the 21st century, again another tree grown at Sugar Grove Tree Farm. Now in the 21st century, the tradition of families choosing a Christmas tree as a centerpiece of holiday celebration continues and has become deeply ingrained in American culture. Many tree farmers and retailers across America witness this firsthand each year. As a Christmas tree farmer myself, it's quite gratifying to understand that what you toil all season long to produce and the experience you work hard to provide is enjoyed by many thousands of families every Christmas. Until the 1950s, real Christmas trees were harvested from native stands in forests and shipped by truck and rail into large cities. The trees were sold at rail yards, produce stands, street corners, and grocery stores. By the 1950s, consumer demand had exceeded the ability of early sellers to supply the trees out of native forests. Sugar Grove Tree Farm picture. To fill this demand, farmers on the West Coast, northern Midwestern states, northeastern states, and Canada started planting Christmas trees to grow as a crop for harvest. Choose and cut farms began appearing in rural areas where consumers were willing to drive into the country on an outing to cut a tree. Garden centers added Christmas trees to their late season product line to extend their sales season. Groups of all types, including churches, Boy Scouts, service organizations, all began selling Christmas trees to make money for their projects. Finally, along came big box retail selling Christmas trees. Here are some statistics of market share for each of the segments where consumers have purchased their Christmas tree. In 2016, the market share of the big box chain stores was about 29%. Choose and cut Christmas tree farms is about 23%. Retail lots, 20%. Garden centers, 16%. Nonprofits, 9%. And other, 4%. The birth and the growth of the Christmas tree production industry also coincided with the birth and maturing of the post-war baby boom generation. Millions of new families with children born to that generation drove demand for Christmas trees, which also drove the expansion of the industry. Families with young children remain the most significant demographic as purchasers and drivers of real tree consumption. Census data from 1950 indicate that 43.5 million households in the U.S., of those 60% were households, 60% were households, I'm not saying that right. Anyhow, 26.2 million had 3 or more persons, presumably including children. By 1970, the number of households had increased to 62.9 million, with 34 of those households having 3 or more persons, presumably including children. By 1970, the baby boomers were getting married, having children, and entering prime years for purchasing a Christmas tree. By the year 2000, there were 104.8 million households in the U.S. 43.3 million of those had 3 or more persons per household. The real tree industry, which began in the 50s, benefited from the demand of these large numbers of new families with children from the 50s well into the 90s. The real tree industry also benefited from the absence of few other Christmas tree alternatives. By 1970, fake trees had begun to appear in garden stores, but the quality of the fake tree was pretty poor. Despite some challenges with real trees continued to be the preferred choice of consumers, but fake trees began claiming market share. As late as 1990, the number of real trees displayed and fake trees displayed in homes was about even. The same household demographics that drove the expanding market for Christmas tree industry and incentivized growers to get into the Christmas tree business also incentivized fake tree manufacturers to make fake trees by the millions. Here you can see how the number of households, the top blue line, the number of fake trees displayed in those households, and the number of real trees displayed in those households. Well, how many households display a Christmas tree each year? According to phone surveys by the American Christmas Tree Association, which, by the way, is the trade association for fake trees and largely consists of just a couple of members, the biggest producers, and phone surveys by the American Christmas Tree Association and the National Christmas Tree Association, the trade association for the real tree industry, agree that nearly 80% of all households display a Christmas tree, real or fake. In 2016, this was approximately 95 to 100 million households. According to these statistics, of those 95 to 100 million households displaying a Christmas tree, real tree share of the Christmas tree market is about 25%. The fake trees share of that market was about 75% of those choosing to display a Christmas tree. From 1990 to now, the sales of real trees have ranged from a low of 22.1 million in 2005 to a high of 37.2 million in 1995. In 2016, the sales of real trees were about 27 million. During the period from 1990 to now, the trend for real trees has been at best stagnant, at worst sales have trended down. Fake trees displayed from 1990 to now ranged from a low of 36.3 million in 1990 to a high of 73 million in 2016. The trend line for sales of fake trees has been flat to up, and market share of households displaying a fake tree has also been up in the same period. Now allow me to address a few perennial issues and myths that the Christmas tree industry battles every year about real trees. One such myth is that real trees come from pristine forests and therefore shameful to use a real tree instead of an artificial one. Of course, this is only a myth and not true at all. 98% of all real Christmas trees sold each year are grown on farms as sustainable crops, just like corn, soybeans, or pumpkins. Another myth is that the real Christmas trees are a fire hazard. How many times have we all seen the burning tree on the local news? Based on records compiled by the National Fire Protection Association, fewer than 1/1000th% of all real Christmas trees used each year are involved in a fire. With proper care, which includes keeping the tree well hydrated, real Christmas trees can maintain their freshness and moisture content throughout the season, and thus are very unlikely to spontaneously combust. Another complaint that is voiced is that real trees aggravate seasonal allergies for some people. While it's quite possible that a person may be allergic to tree pollen, the fragrance of the tree or even the tree sap, allergic reactions during the Christmas tree holiday season are likely from other seasonal sources. Judy Tidwell, author of Your Guide to Allergies, reports that during the holidays there are many allergens that can cause reactions, although the real Christmas tree often takes the blame. The main culprits are mold, dust, and food. A real tree does not produce pollen during December, but having been outdoors for years in the field, it can collect dust, mold, and pollen and other allergens. Of course, so can the fake tree stored in the attic or basement. Here are some statistics about the size of Christmas tree production in the United States and Ohio. These statistics have been compiled by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and are from the USDA 2012 Census of Agriculture. For those of you who don't know, that's a census that's done every 5 years. The most recent published results were in 2012. That's why I don't have anything more recent. This chart shows the number of trees produced in each state for a total of 17,318,000. The National Christmas Tree Association believes that this number is significantly understated, as our post-Christmas yearly consumer poll tells us that the sales of real trees in the U.S. in 2012 were more than 24 million trees. While the U.S. imports some real trees from Canada, we don't think we import as many as 7 million. You will see that Oregon and North Carolina are the two major production states. Ohio happens to be number 11 on that list in 2012, falling from 9th place in 2007 and 2002. USDA statistics in 2012 show that the number of Christmas tree farms in the U.S. was estimated to be about 13,000, with over 309,000 acres in production. Those farms may range in size from the farm of a couple acres that sell 50 trees per year to the farm of several 100,000 acres that will produce and sell 1 million trees. Ohio Christmas tree farms in 2012 was estimated to be 550 farms with over 7,000 acres in production. The average farm size in Ohio is about 12 acres. Every year since the late 1980s, the National Christmas Tree Association has conducted a national consumer poll in early January, asking the consumer questions about their Christmas tree shopping preferences for the season just passed. This chart shows the results of that consumer poll for the last 10 Christmas seasons. It shows sales of both real trees and fake trees over that period. Sales of real trees in 2016 were approximately 27.4 million trees for a value of $2.4 billion. This has been fairly consistent for the last decade. Keep in mind when looking at this chart, it does not tell you the total number of Christmas trees, fake or real, displayed in any given season, only the sales of real and fake trees. A real tree will be displayed for only one season, while a fake tree may be displayed for many seasons. National Christmas Tree Association studies suggest that a fake tree is displayed for 7 years before disposal. Using national statistics based on the total number of households, the 2016 consumption of real trees in Ohio was about 970,000 trees, and the value of the trees purchased in Ohio was about $72.5 million. Ohio production of real trees is about 151,000 trees, requiring the importation into Ohio of over 800,000 trees per year. Most of those imported trees are sold in the big box stores, garden centers, and various tree lots that appear each year. Most of the trees grown in Ohio are sold on the farm as choose and harvest option. According to the same consumer poll, fake tree sales nationwide in 2016 were approximately 18.6 million for a value of $1.6 billion. Using the same national statistics applied to Ohio consumption suggests that 2016 sales of fake trees in Ohio were about 660,000 trees for a value of $64 million. The battle between real trees and fake trees at Christmas has been ongoing since the mid-19th century. Early fake trees were made of green-dyed goose feathers. The first fake trees showed up in private homes in the 1920s in Germany and the United States. In 1930, the U.S.-based Addis Toilet Brush Company created the first fake tree made of brush bristles. By 1958, aluminum was used to make fake Christmas trees. A color wheel was added to simulate colorful electric lights because a string of lights placed on a fake tree was considered an electrocution hazard on all aluminum trees. Today, fake trees are manufactured in China and made of lead-stabilized polyvinyl chloride and shipped here. They are not recyclable or biodegradable. Most of the hundreds of millions that have ever been manufactured still exist and are in city landfills across the country. Reasons consumers have given for preferring fake trees over real trees include that they are more convenient, not a fire hazard, have less of an impact on the environment. I would concede that fake trees are more convenient, but they're certainly still a fire hazard having been made from oil. I would also argue that fake trees have a longer lasting negative impact on the environment because they are not biodegradable. My strongest rebuttal to those consumers who still think fake trees are a better choice is that treasured family memories and experiences are not made when the fake tree box is retrieved from the attic, basement, or storage garage, dusted off, and pre-wired lights plugged in. Treasured family memories are made on a day with fresh snow when you and your family visit a tree lot or a tree farm in search of the perfect tree. The time you spend together on this adventure is what forms family memories and traditions. There are some real empirical environmental benefits of real Christmas trees. Those benefits include the production of oxygen during photosynthesis, sequestration of carbon from the atmosphere, and filtration of pollutants from the air. In a 2014 Journal of Environmental Pollution, forester Dave Nowak and colleagues wrote that forests, including real trees, prevented 850 human deaths and 670,000 cases of acute respiratory symptoms in 2010. These lives were saved because of the removal of 17 tons of air pollution removed by trees and forests that physically intercept particulate matter and absorb gases through their leaves. Real trees also provide wildlife habitat and green spaces. Real trees are biodegradable and completely recyclable and renewable. I would argue that the social and economic benefits of real trees are far more significant than the environmental benefits. Those social and economic benefits include supporting U.S.-based local business, perhaps a local farmer, spending time with your family and friends celebrating memorable holiday traditions, spending time outside in the natural environment, and enjoying the mood-altering smell of real trees. From a scientific point of view, which product has the least impact on the environment and climate change? In 2009, Ellipsos of Montreal, Canada, strategists in sustainable development, produced a life cycle assessment of a real tree and a fake tree to answer that question. Researchers examined the life cycle of a real tree in 4 phases: 4 years in the seedling nursery, 11 years in the production field, transporting it home and use in the home, and end-of-life issues. For fake trees, researchers examined the life cycle of a fake tree also in 4 phases: production and manufacturing in China, transportation here, use at home, and end-of-life issues. The primary impact assessment method used in this study is Impact 2002 Plus, modified to include the effects of biogenic gases on climate change. Not being an environmental scientist, I don't understand what I just said, so don't ask me any questions about the methodology. Maybe Elizabeth can illuminate that. If you want more information about this study, here's a link to the site, and if you send me an email request, I'll email the link back to you. The results of this study are as follows, and I quote from the executive summary. When compared on an annual basis, the artificial tree, which has a lifespan of 6 years, has 3 times more impacts on climate change and resource depletion than a natural tree. It is roughly equivalent in terms of human health impacts, but almost 4 times better on ecosystem quality compared to the natural tree. And I'm still quoting. The hot topic of these days is climate change. When looking at these impacts, the natural tree contributes to significantly less carbon dioxide emission than the artificial tree. Nevertheless, because the impacts of the artificial tree occur at the production stage, and since it can be used multiple times, if the artificial tree were kept longer, it would become a better solution than the natural tree. It would take, however, according to this study, 20 years before the artificial tree would become a better solution regarding climate change. Any of you who've used fake trees over the years know you don't keep it anywhere close to that. To me, the results of this study simply said are the negative impact on climate change of just 1 fake tree is comparable to the negative impact on the environment of 20 trees. To say it another way, the negative impact on climate change of the use of 20 real trees at Christmas by 20 consumers is comparable to the negative impact on the climate change of only 1 fake tree used by 1 consumer. Those 20 real trees can be recycled back into the environment, while a fake tree will stay in the landfill for centuries when their useful life is over. This study suggests that displaying and keeping a fake tree for more than 20 years is a better environmental solution than real trees. However, today's fake tree consumer will display that fake trees for only 6 to 8 years, well short of the 20 years needed to make an environmentally better choice. Given that pattern of fake tree consumption, real trees for me is clearly the better environmental choice. In conclusion, I want to share with you a short video for me communicates why a real tree is the best choice in addition to the environmental advantages of real trees. Family togetherness and traditions are what Christmas holidays are about, and the real tree experience does that better than a fake tree. I'm not capable of running this.
One of the joys of putting together this program since July or August, whenever we started talking, Kathy, was being stopped in the hallways around Copman Hall, or people emailing me or sending me messages wanting to share what their holiday decoration story is and how it relates to the environment. And I heard some fantastic stories, whether it was artificial trees or real trees, of people's holiday traditions. So we tried to capture a few of those in quick stories, so I'm just going to show a few of those now. Thank you for your time, and Elizabeth will be up after this.
Our most recent artificial tree had at least 3 lives. First life was with a family in Grandview Heights who put it out to their curb as a donation. I saw it when I was out for a run and picked it up. And that tree was ours for about 9 years. When we were done with it, we put an ad on Free Cycle, and someone from the zoo contacted me saying they were interested in a holiday display for the birds in the aviary, and that's where it went.
My Christmas tree story. So one of the greatest times was when we go pick out a Christmas tree. We were all up in my dad's truck, and then we would go to the Christmas tree farm. And I remember one year they gave us a saw to cut the tree down. My dad was like, you know what, I bought a chainsaw, so I'm not even gonna fool with that. So I was like, so much for enjoying the experience, but we cut the tree, and we would go up to the gift shop, get hot chocolate, buy a little trinket or so, and then we were heading
Hi,
home.
my name is Itzel, and my favorite Christmas tradition when I was younger is something that most kids in Mexico do. And on Christmas Eve, you would buy a balloon that would normally say to the North Pole or to Santa or something like that, and you would tie your list of wishes to Santa, and you would let it go at midnight in the hopes that it would get to the North Pole and Santa would read it.
29.
This is our Christmas tree story. Years ago, when my son Joe was about the age of my grandchildren here, Whit and Lucy, we bought a 4-foot tall Norway spruce tree and decorated it for the inside and outside for our Christmas, because a lot of times we had to travel and be gone over Christmas. So after Christmas, we planted this tree behind me, and luckily, and with the help of our seasoned and very wise neighbor, Mr. Paul, we planted that tree just far enough so it didn't hit the house. Ready? Have fun with your Christmas tree!
Bye-bye.
What do we do for a Christmas tree every year? Well, we buy a tree from the Forestry Forum. It's a tradition. It starts our Christmas. We buy the tree, we take it home, we set it up, and then the very next thing we do after the lights and the decorations is we put the nativity scene under the tree. But it's not a traditional nativity scene. Not only does it include the typical figurines that one would have for a nativity scene, but we have a bobblehead pope. We have various terracotta figures from the first Chinese emperor. We have the little boy in his bunny outfit from Christmas Story, and at least 3 Bumbles from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the classic cartoon. And that menagerie makes for a very ecumenical nativity scene.
Hello. Thanks. I am notorious for not standing behind a podium here, so I'm going to try and use the... Oh, I just turned it off. Try and use the... is it working? Perfect. Great. Well, I'm going to speak a little bit about the science and kind of some studies that have been done on Christmas trees, life cycle assessment. And this is a term that maybe some of you are not familiar with, but you might be familiar with the results. So if you've heard of a carbon footprint or an ecological footprint, these are conducted, they're determined through a life cycle assessment. And so just a little bit of background, a point of departure here. We get these terms, life cycle, from biology. And you think of the life cycle in biology, you think of the life cycle of an organism, thinking of it, looking at it from birth through death. And so you might have seen a life cycle of a tree, the diagram, where it goes from seed to seedling to tree to the pollen and the cone and producing a new tree, new seeds. Or you might think of a life cycle of a butterfly. And the idea is that there are these distinct phases or stages during the life. There's a birth phase or stage. There's some intermediate stages and a death phase or stage as well. So we take that concept and we put it on a product. So let's apply this concept of having a life cycle to a Christmas tree. And we can think of a life cycle of a real tree where birth is in the ground, a seed maybe, seedling grows year 6. Maybe in year 15 it's cut down and displayed in your home. And then thrown out. Year 16 maybe goes to landfill. Maybe it's composted, and that compost is added to the soil, provides nutrients to create a new tree. So this is kind of a birth-to-birth maybe cycle. Whereas the life cycle of a fake tree or an artificial tree here at the bottom, artificial trees, as Blake mentioned, are now mostly made of PVC, of a plastic, which is a petroleum product. So the birth of that would actually be an oil field. Oh, wrong button. Come on. Middle Eastern oil, right? And then that oil gets shipped by tanker across the ocean to China, possibly, where it's produced into plastic, maybe to another factory where it's made into the tree. The tree is shipped across the ocean again to your home, to a retail store. Then you purchase it, display it in your home, and then maybe for 3 years, maybe for 7 years, up to 6 years, then out to landfill. That's the end of life there. So this is kind of the idea of applying this life cycle. We've got a life. Each of our products has a life. And so what is life cycle assessment then? You may have heard of these terms cradle to grave or cradle to cradle analysis. We're looking at all of these phases, these stages during the life of the product, and we are considering all of the flows, the inputs that go into making that product and the outputs that come out. So we're thinking about what is water used along the way? What are our air emissions? What kind of energy is put into making these products or to using these products? And then we're going to come up with some total environmental impacts from our product. It's a nonlinear systems approach to analysis. So thinking back to that, maybe that example of the butterfly, where a butterfly has these distinct, definable stages, we typically think of the life cycle of a product as having these phases of material extraction. We're getting our raw materials from the natural environment. Material processing, we're making those natural, those raw materials, into some product. Then we're manufacturing, we're taking that product, so the plastics, making it into our product. A use phase, where that product's being used, and then an end-of-life phase, the waste management. And that end-of-life may be straight to landfill, or we may end up reusing it in some form, reuse, remanufacture, recycle. And I've highlighted the term use here because typically we think of a product, if we want to make it environmental or a green product, we hear, oh, this piece of clothing is so sustainable or so green because it's biodegradable. But really, that's only looking at one phase. We're only looking at the end-of-life phase then when we're thinking about biodegradable. Or you might hear, my wood product is sustainable because it came from a sustainably managed forest, right? But again, we're just looking at one stage of the life. We're just looking at how it was grown, the cultivation, the beginning of life. Life cycle assessment wants to look at the full life cycle, so considering all of these stages. And often use phase, that use phase is the one that has the most environmental impacts. I'll give you an example. Potato. I could walk to my local farmer's market, purchase a bag of potatoes that's been grown locally, organically maybe. Great, I'm being very sustainable, right? I walk home. Now, if I put that potato, or a few potatoes, in a pot of boiling water, and I boil it with the lid off for a long time, that potato now has the carbon footprint of a side of French fries that I drove my car to McDonald's to get. So we have to think about not just growing, not just end of life, but the use phase as well. So it starts to get pretty complicated, as you can imagine. I put up here the systems for each of the phases with a natural tree system. And I know there's a lot of small writing up here, so I don't expect you to be able to see it all. Let me just give you an overview. I keep pushing the wrong button. On this side is the birth, or the growth. So we're looking at a natural tree here, a real tree. These are all of the things that go into that cultivation, that growing at the beginning of life of a natural tree. And we're looking at some of our natural inputs in green here: rain, water, nitrogen, soil, erosion. We even need some biodiversity. We're using biodiversity to produce that tree. And then we've also got some of our more human inputs as well: handwork, seeding, the effort that goes into that. The blue boxes are some of our processes that go on. So we've got chemical mowing, selective harvesting, pesticide fertilizing, shaping, harvesting, stump grinding, all to produce a tree from the farm, right? So that's our output there. Well, this is, again, looking at just everything that goes on in the birth. We take that tree, and it goes to the retailer, and we've got transport involved. We've got care, cleaning, shaking, baling. We've got a lot of inputs that go into that, some outputs, emissions, needles for disposal. And then that tree goes home with you, and I actually don't have the use phase up here, but at home it would involve transport to your home. So we have to think about the emissions, the energy that goes into using your personal vehicle. And then use, that real tree is going to require water, so we're also considering the water that it uptakes. And then end of life here gets transported with a dump truck. We've got options of composting, combustion, or landfill, straight to landfill, and the outputs that come out from that. So you can see that we start to collect a lot of data, and it gets fairly complicated. This is just for a natural tree. Can you imagine what this would look like for an artificial tree, where we've got wires, we've got plastic, we've got bulbs? How complicated this might start to get. But our inspiration for wanting to study a life cycle may be varied. We may just want to know economics, and we can think about that. Maybe we don't need quite the complicated systems diagram that we had before. But we're typically looking at our environmental aspects. So energy, how much energy demand, how much energy are we requiring to produce these products and to use them? Air emissions, water emissions. And we can also use life cycle assessment to think about human labor issues as well. Once we have this diagram and these flow processes, how does this fit in? For any of these items of concern, we would need to take our structure and then find that useful data. You can imagine this can take a long time. Some life cycle assessments take years to complete. Luckily, there are some helps. There are LCA databases where a lot of this information is stored already. There are some models that can be used. There's loads of data available to collect and analyze, and for our debate of artificial versus real tree, I did not have to go through a life cycle assessment. Luckily, it's already been done for us. Blake brought up a life cycle assessment that I had not seen before. This one was conducted by PE Americas, which is again, the wrong button, a consulting firm in Boston, Massachusetts that does life cycle assessments. But this was commissioned by the American Christmas Tree Association in California. And I've got a link to this report. Joe will have it if you'd like it, or you can talk to me as well. But I'd like to, this was done in 2010, and I'd like to present some of the results from it. First of all, I want to give you some of the constraints or the boundaries there. The artificial tree that they used was the most common artificial tree sold in the US. It actually accounts for 20% of the market share. One SKU, one artificial tree is sold in many different box stores. It's made in China, imported to box stores here in the US, and they had the boundaries that it was disposed of in a landfill. They looked at different scenarios of a 1-year use, a 5-year use, and a 10-year use of that tree. And then the natural tree, they took a typical, the most common Christmas tree is a Fraser fir in the United States. So 6.5 foot tall Fraser fir. They used climate conditions from North Carolina. Spent 4 years in nursery, 7 years in the ground. And for your information, the carbon storage, you can think of real trees as sequestering carbon during their life, right? So that they use that as a negative release. So that actually counts as a negative carbon release. And then they looked at energy capture for end of life they looked at 3 different scenarios. 100% composted of the tree was put to landfill, so 100% landfill, and then 100% incarceration. And for all 3 of these options, they looked at some of the energy capture with those. All right, right into a really busy graph. It's got a lot going on, but it is very telling. It's interesting. This is global warming, so they looked at a number of different impacts. I'm going to look specifically at global warming potential and energy use, energy demand. So global warming potential here, measured in kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents. And here we've got our artificial tree. And the color bands in the blocks here have to do with the phases. So end of life, use, finished tree. Where did those impacts come from during that life cycle? We want to look at the black dot. That's our total. And again, you can see that this blue that comes during the manufacturing, that's that carbon sequestration. So that's actually a negative global warming value. But we get up to total. So what does this tell us? We've got our 3 different scenarios for the natural tree of landfill, incineration, sorry. Did I say incarceration earlier? That's hilarious, putting the tree in jail. Okay, incineration, we're burning it. And then composting. But as you can see, if we put our tree in landfill, our natural tree, it actually stores that carbon, continues to store that carbon. It's such a slow breakdown process in landfill that we will always have a negative global warming potential if our natural tree goes straight to landfill. If we are burning our natural tree, it's going to take about 3 years or 3 trees, natural trees, to equal the environmental impacts and global warming of an artificial tree. If we're composting, it's about a little less than 4 years to equal the environmental impacts of that artificial tree. So this is at the 5-year and the 10-year, but we can kind of look at the 1 year and extrapolate those values. Same kind of graph for the energy demand, our primary energy demand. And again, each bar is broken down by phase of the life cycle. And here we see our artificial tree has an energy demand of 305 megajoules. To get up to that value, our natural tree would be about 3 natural trees if we were landfilling them. 6, so 6 years of natural trees if we're burning, and 4-ish if we're composting. Well, how much energy really is that? What is 305 megajoules? What are we talking about? Is this a big deal? Let's look at just the lights that we use. So if you use 4 strands of lights, that's 400 lights. And if we're thinking about using them, an incandescent light, not an LED, we use them for 18 days, 4 hours a day. We are using about 170 megajoules of energy. So already you can see that the lights, how we use this tree, what lights we use, is really going to play more important role in our energy demand and our environmental impacts of the tree than the actual tree itself. And with life cycle assessment, we like to do what is called a sensitivity analysis. And I've run out of time, so I'm just going to go really quickly through this. But I'm a teacher, so I like to ask questions. What do you think, what process in the life cycle of a tree would be the most influential for the environmental impacts of the tree? Any ideas? Disposal, end of life. Okay, that's one. Any others? Production. Okay, so as a general phase, production is. But are there any? Can we narrow it down? Is there any one process along the way that might have a large impact? Transport. Great. Yep, that's it. And specifically, what kind of transportation? Which one? Our vehicle, our personal vehicle. That is where some of the most environmental impacts come from. And so the boxes around where the study was conducted, it assumed a 2.5-mile one way to get the tree, either way. But you can see that, for example, if I had to travel 25 miles to get my natural tree, then the environmental benefits are completely taken away. An artificial tree would be more environmentally friendly in 1 year. Again, this is artificial tree. This is just looking at the carbon footprint. The report does this for all of the different impacts. And this is, my tree was composted because my city picks them up and grinds them, whatever. But in my circumstance, it depends on how far you have to drive to get your trees, the environmental impact that you're having. The study conclusions: consumers who purchase artificial trees should keep the tree for several years, more than 4. Environmentally conscious consumers should focus on minimizing car travel rather than choosing their tree type. And this was straight from the report here. Neither natural nor artificial Christmas tree purchases constitute a significant environmental impact within most American lifestyles. Looking at the total environmental impact of one Christmas tree is less than 0.01% of the average American's carbon footprint. So really look at some of the other aspects if you're trying to be more green around Christmas. And that is all that I have for now.
Thank you.
We have time for questions. Just raise your hand.
I'm one of those sinful people who has an artificial Christmas tree. And we purchased it because we were in a store where they were going to dispose of one of their display trees. We were getting older and thinking we were going to succumb and we'd buy one. And the guy offered it to us. We could buy the display model that he was going to get rid of for half price. We took it. Okay, if I'm feeling not great about this, which today I'm not, I'm wondering, of course I don't want this thing to go to the landfill and lay there, for centuries. But if I have it and I wanted to get rid of it, what do I do with it? Any solutions on that one?
Very good question. And honestly, I think you've actually done a very good job if you're thinking environmentally. If you keep it for longer than 7 years, excellent. You've already had a smaller carbon footprint and I'd say ecological footprint as well. This looked at a number of different things besides energy. Then replacing every year with a natural tree. Now, end of life, that's a really hard question because there isn't a good recycling option anywhere. So trying to reuse, maybe giving it to a thrift store, finding another home for it, someplace that it could be used. Liz Klein talked about how she gave hers to the zoo and they were doing different things like that. So there might be an option for it somewhere else. Do you have something, Blake?
Do you have a better idea?
Not real. Just confess your sin.
Another question? Yeah, Myra.
Okay, from a sustainability perspective, you're looking at environmental sustainability. Is there also some use to looking at social and economic? And when I'm even thinking of social sustainability, I'm thinking of that wonderful trip that you take with your entire family out to the Christmas tree farm. Or with economic, what is the cost difference specifically from the cost of the tree between the artificial and the real?
I don't know that I can give you any real dollar numbers. I think those benefits are really hard to quantify, at least from my perspective. Of the thousands of people that visit my location every year, just the fun that they have and the togetherness and the atmosphere, I'm not sure that that's something that is very easily quantifiable. We just had a really muddy, wet weekend at our place, and the mud was awful. But I said to some of the people who visited us, I said, you're not going to forget this Christmas. This is going to be one you're going to talk about. So I would argue that it's the memories that you create and the traditions that are there that are really difficult to quantify, but you'll talk about it for a very long time.
Thank you, you're right. I didn't mention that sustainability really has 3 pillars. And the green aspect is only one of them. Economically, I mean, you can just look at the price tag difference between the two, and that's a simpler analysis calculation. But again, the social aspect of it is a big thing, and that's harder to quantify. We can do things like cost to avoid or price to pay. What would you be willing to pay, kind of to put a price on this value to compare them? But I have not seen any studies that have done that for Christmas trees.
Hi, my name is Nicole. I had a question in regards to, sorry, my brain is like very overwhelmed, and don't beat yourself up. I love you. You're awesome. So this is in regards to just what Blake was talking about as far as the very beginning, the history, and then as well as the science of it. But I was thinking about the national Christmas tree. It's that was coming from Oregon. So they're celebrating the 50th, I believe, anniversary of the National Trails Systems Act and the 175th anniversary of the Oregon Trail. So when you brought up this science of it, as far as the transportation, I thought about that as far as that tree traveling from Willamette National Forest all the way to DC, and then just the history component of how that speaks to all of the issues we have in terms of climate change, advocacy, and supporting more of using natural trees. So I kind of want to speak to both of those things and what you think about like the social aspect and society contributing to that message of using natural trees. Sorry, I know that was a lot too, but yeah.
If I understand your question, I think you're wanting to know, well, gee, why are we transporting this tree out of our national forest to Washington, D.C., and why aren't we concerned about the environmental impact of transporting it? Well, you have a case, but we're talking about one tree across the country, and that tree becomes a symbol of our celebration. I think there are certainly things that occur in this country that we celebrate nationally. If you were watching TV at all yesterday, you saw President George H.W. Bush's plane fly back to Texas, and all the pomp and circumstance that went on with his arrival in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's a huge impact on environmentally, but think of the national unity that comes out of that celebration that has meaning to us as Americans and believers in the Christmas tree or in the Christmas holiday. While certainly, yes, it does have a significant impact, but again, here I think there is a far greater social impact that occurs that we all feel as American citizens in celebrating that holiday. I can't give you an answer that's the wrong thing to do, but I think it's a plus for us to celebrate a national event like that.
That's exactly, sorry, rewind. That's exactly what I wanted you to speak to, was although we're talking about the science and like these trade-offs, the good and the bad, there's a big social part of it. That's what I wanted you to speak to as far as the history and what we're learning about.
Did I get that?
Yes, so thank you for that. I just couldn't get that.
We have time for one more question. Glenn?
Yeah, it just seems to me, so I have an artificial tree that we've had for several years, so I'm not in the market, but is anyone making a tree that's mostly made of recycled materials that's capturing a market that if there's not one being made, then some entrepreneur in the room ought to pick this up, but it seems like there would be a pretty good market for a renewable artificial tree.
Again, you need to confess your sins, and I'll absolve you. I'm not aware of any biodegradable fake tree.
Well, that brings us to a conclusion. I really appreciate both Blake and Elizabeth and Valerie and the whole team for helping put together this great program. As I hear this, I guess I'm a natural tree fan. I appreciate the social benefits of it. I will have to say, in our school, we do a lot to try to promote the forest industry, and I've really come to appreciate the non-timber products sort of sector here and the sort of value it brings to the state of Ohio. And I think in terms of enriching Ohioans, creating opportunities for Ohioans, and supporting Ohio businesses, these, whether it's maple, whether it's Christmas trees, whatever it is, it's adding a lot to our communities. And I think that's something that when we get too attentive to the math, sometimes we miss out on some of those aspects of it too. So I think from a math standpoint, we need to figure out how to quantify those things, because I think there are values in that and stuff. But I think we need to be critical and sensitive to sort of like, the math doesn't always work out for sort of like things that make we intuitively feel. And as somebody that studies sort of like some of this local food systems or local systems, it's too easy for us to immediately think local is more sustainable, and we need to be critically interrogating that. So I hope today's program helped you critically interrogate some of these questions you grapple with. I've made my decision in terms of where I'm going to throw my hat in, so and hopefully you can too. That does it for today's program. As is our tradition, we do offer a certificate of appreciation to both Elizabeth and Blake. An image
Thank you.
that's appropriate to our topic today. I'd like to bring you, yes. I'd like to bring to your attention that we have our next programs are listed on the back of your program. You can sort of see what those are. January 15th, we'll be having a program related to climate change mitigation and adaptation. And I'm excited at what we're going to be having in February with looking at diversity in the environmental movement. And we have a great program lined up there. So please help out. Grab a forestry poster as you leave. If you need a Christmas tree, there are going to be some folks out here trying to sell you on that. If you want to give it as a gift, maybe, to somebody that would like a tree that's an artificial addict right now, that would be great. So anyway, have a great day.
Thank you.